This is Sunday Reflections, What the Pond Can Teach Us. I'm Gideon Pollock, and each week I write these reflections from St. John's Episcopal Church in Cold Spring Harbor, New York, where our beloved church sits alongside a beautiful mill pond. Throughout the years now, we've been watching our pond and watershed and letting them teach us about prayer, participation, and what it means to be creatures made from earth. Whether you're walking past your own water source right now or sitting quietly at home, I invite you to join me in this week's reflection. Abundance. The spillway lost one of its weir boards a few weeks ago. It had been running harder than I had seen it run in years. All of it, the snowmelt, the April rains, weeks of accumulation moving through the watershed at once, and apparently the board became a suggestion. My colleague Doug noticed the water line first, a retreating edge, more visible rocks, a little more mud on the church side than there should be. The pond was emptying itself. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, persistently, in the direction it has always wanted to go. Every morning since, on my way to work, I stop and check it. The engineering firm we are working with is moving faster now on the weir rebuild. The pond needs to be held. We are not in the business of losing it entirely, and there is nothing romantic about an empty pond bed full of mud in June. Stewardship is real, and it requires us sometimes to slow what wants to run. But every morning, the spillway teaches me the same thing. Abundance flows if we let it, even sometimes when we don't. The pond didn't break the weir board, the abundance did. All that water pressing outward the way water does, following the only instruction it has ever been given, toward the harbor, toward the sound, toward the ocean, simply exceeded what we had built to contain it. The pond was not misbehaving. It was being itself completely. There is a word for this in the Christian tradition: kenosis, self-emptying. It comes from Paul's letter to the Philippians, where Paul writes that Christ, quote, emptied himself, poured himself out, gave himself away, let go of what he might have kept. Kenosis is one of the central mysteries of our faith and one of the least preached, because it is the most spiritually demanding. To give, not from surplus, but from substance. To flow outward, not because you have extra, but because outward is the direction of love. The Christian tradition has always held that creation bears the imprint of its creator. And what God is, God pours into what God makes. Flourishing, abundant, joyful, creative, redemptive, rising. The pond doesn't empty itself because it has heard the gospel. It empties itself because it was made by a God who empties, and that nature went all the way down into the water and the mud and the spillway. The pond is trying to follow Jesus in the only way it knows, giving itself to something larger, drawn by gravity and desire. It doesn't deliberate or count the cost. The spillway is not a metaphor. It is the thing itself. And that water lands somewhere. It flows from our spillway into Cold Spring Harbor, where baymen have been hand-raking oysters and clams for generations. 80 or more independent harvesters working the same estuary our pond feeds into, in all weather, by hand. What happens at our spillway flows downstream to their livelihood. The health of our water is the health of their work. And the oysters themselves, each one filtering 50 gallons of water a day quietly without thinking about it, participating in the watershed's healing the way the pond participates in it. The oysters are doing the same thing the spillway does, receiving what arrives, giving back something clean. The pond empties itself toward the harbor, and the harbor gives back life. This is what the economy of abundance looks like when it reaches all the way down. We will rebuild the weir. We should. The pond in its fullness sustains more life than an empty basin ever could, and stewardship is its own form of love. But I find myself grateful these past weeks for the board that has been washed out, for the daily reminder that what we are managing has its own deep instinct, older than our plans, pressing always outward toward the harbor, toward the sound, toward whatever comes next. A prayer. God of the outflowing water, who poured yourself into flesh, and then into death, and then into the endless life that followed, teach us the kenosis the pond already knows. We confess how easily we mistake accumulation for abundance, how readily we mistake what contains us for what sustains us. Loosen what we have built to contain ourselves. Let what has been gathering in us find its way to you through Christ, who emptied himself, not despite being God, but because of it, and who is the spillway through whom all things flow toward you. Amen. I hope this reflection gives you new eyes to see the creation around you this week. If you'd like to continue the conversation or support our ministry, find us at www.stjcsh.org or at our sister site, SJPWA, which is the St. John's Pond Watershed Alliance, sjpwa.org. This week, find some moving water and listen. It doesn't have to be grand, a creek, a downspout, or a faucet. If you're nearby our meditation garden, the waterfall is running and has been running all week, and you don't need a key. That is what abundance sounds like. Until next Sunday, peace be with you.